From a dramatic downturn to a rapid rise to new all-time highs, this is exactly the kind of week that has made many smart investors a lot of money. Joining us today is Keith Kaplan, the CEO of TradeSmith. Keith, I feel like investors are dealing with a little bit of whiplash right now with all of the sudden moves we've had in a very short amount of time. While some people may be tired of all of the volatility and chaos, other investors are celebrating these rapid moves because they know how to use it for their benefit. And you are going to get into that in this conversation today and share 3 specific stock tickers that are showing really strong signals during this week's market rally. We're going to get to those 3 names, but I want to start the conversation with your general market reaction. You've been investing for decades in the market every day. Can you remember any other time quite like this?
This is crazy. All-time highs during a war. I mean, just let that sink in. The S&P 500 hit an all-time high back on January 28th. Right after that, we had a war, we had an oil shock, geopolitical chaos, and in just 30 days, the index dropped to $6,300. That's almost a 700 points being vaporized pretty much overnight, in my opinion, and it was almost 10% drawdown. This happened fast. Then in just 16 days, it roared back to set a brand new all-time high, crossing over 7,000 yesterday. One of the best 15 days rallies in years. Now, layer on top of that, gold is sitting near 4,780 an ounce. That's not normal. Gold at this level, it is screaming that serious money is scared and it's looking for safety. Oil is around just over $90 a barrel with wild swings tied to the Hormuz Strait fears. Inflation is still 3.3%. This is sticky. It's above the Fed's target with no clean resolution in sight. I don't see how inflation just turns around. It's probably just going to creep higher. So yes, I've seen volatile markets, but not like this. This combination of a new all-time high in the S&P, near record gold, elevated oil, sticky inflation happening all at once. That's a very specific kind of chaos, in my opinion. And here's what I've learned in my decades looking at the markets. This is exactly the environment where the right kind of short-term trading absolutely thrives. The signals are firing everywhere right now. In fact, right before this, I ran a signal study on the NASDAQ because it just went up 11 consecutive days in a row. And anytime that's happened, we've seen over 6 months a lot of volatility, but towards the 6-month mark and all the way to the year mark, the NASDAQ has always closed higher. On average in a year, up 28%. So this is wild.
This is wild, and it could be just the beginning. And I know that you are looking back historically to get some guidance on what could happen in the future. Like you said, investors, traders who know how to work in this kind of volatile market are the ones who really make the most. There can be a lot of money made. People have made a lot of money off of market weeks just like this one. But let's look back at history. I think one thing that investors say is there anything to look back on that models this? We've had so much volatility really over the past year. Is there any historical evidence that we can actually look at for guidance in this kind of situation?
Yes and no. So here's something I think is really important for investors to know right now. I frame this as there is before 2020, and then there is the last 6 years after 2020. These are genuinely 2 different types of markets. Before 2020, you could look back 30 years and look at that sort of history and find real guidance. Buy quality companies, hold through cycles and the chaos, let the compounding do the work. That framework had a very long track record. Then COVID hit. The world went remote. Millions of new retail traders flooded into the market. Robinhood accounts, meme stocks, zero commission trading, completely new behavior patterns here. Then you had the Fed pumping trillions in stimulus, rates going to zero, assets inflating everywhere. Then rates spiked back up. Then AI arrived and became rocket fuel for irrational meltups. So a company announces it's adding the word AI to its strategy and the stock jumps 40% in a day. That does not happen in a normal market. So when people ask me, what does history say about this? I tell them this. History before 2020, it's a different book. The old buy and hold fundamental 10-year time horizon approach in this type of market, that is not a strategy. That's just hoping. And the data backs this up. The average investor who bought and held a diversified portfolio over the last 6 years has had a much bumpier, much more stressful ride than any historical model would have predicted. AI is changing industries, and you can't sit on the sidelines. So this is where someone like Jim Simons becomes more relevant than ever, not less. And most people haven't heard about him. He never relied on long-term fundamentals. He was looking for short-term, repeatable mathematical patterns in data. He built his machine specifically for markets that move fast, move irrationally and in ways that defy conventional wisdom. And he averaged 66% annual returns for 40 years through every kind of chaos, including chaos that looked exactly like this. So what he found was something hiding in the market's own price history, something called signals. They're specific fingerprints that when they align, they point to a high probability trade before it occurs. They're repeatable, they're mathematical, and they're documented. And in a post-2020 world, it's not just an edge. It's the only framework that actually makes sense.
Chaos is exactly the word to describe what the market feels like right now. And it's so interesting to turn to the dependability, the reliability of math and statistics and data when you're in the middle of this chaotic storm where the market is moving on one headline after another and there's tons of changes happening. But I think, again, that the fear comes up for investors. Is anything repeatable? You need to look for repeatable patterns, but how can you look for a pattern when everything seems to happen on a whim in this kind of a market?
Great point, and it's probably one of the most important questions somebody can ask right now. The answer will completely, sort of flip what most investors are thinking. Volatility doesn't destroy signals, it actually multiplies them. There are rapid, dramatic price swings, exactly like the ones that we just lived through, and this forces market data into rare configurations that only surface a handful of times per decade. Those are the types of setups that have the highest historical accuracy and the biggest potential gains. The chaos is actually creating more high probability opportunities right now than ever, not fewer. In 2020, the COVID crash, we had the fastest 30% drop in history. There was pure panic. Apple, one of the best businesses in the world, fell 19% in a single month for no rational reason. Our backtested model portfolio kept finding winners the entire time that the markets were dropping and have dropped since then. Not because we predicted a crash, but because signals don't care about a crash. They just ask, is the thumbprint of a high probability trade forming right now? No human brain can track and scan all of the stocks that are out there every morning and find these types of combination. And that's where our newest software that's powered by AI, really machine learning specifically, helps you cut through the noise and find signals that you can trade every day.
Yeah, I know you and the whole team at TradeSmith have created a brand new AI tool that can help alert investors to those exact signals of when it's time to buy. If you want to try out that system today, there is a free offer just for our MarketBeat viewers. You can try out the system on any 3 stocks that you want. You can scan the QR code or click the link in the description to gain access to that tool today. Keith, I know you were going to walk us through 3 specific stock tickers that your system is showing some really strong signals for this week. And I'm really excited for this. At the end of the video, you're also going to walk us through some major signals and historic patterns that you were looking at in the overall market, specifically in the NASDAQ, and what this tells us about where the market could be heading over the next few months ahead. So stay tuned for that at the end of the video. Before you get to the first stock on the list, talk about what your system is looking for and why these 3 names actually stand out.
Absolutely. So every single morning, our system is scanning about 2,500 different stocks using the same type of AI architecture that powers ChatGPT. Instead of processing words, though, we're processing a full decade of price data. And we're looking for what I call thumbprints, specific combinations of factors, many that people don't understand, but these specific combinations that, when they align in exactly the right sequence, have produced outsized gains consistently over time. The bar to make this list is actually brutal. We have stress tested across bull markets, bear markets, crashes, black swan events, and so forth. And we throw out a massive amount of signals that we test. Then there's this sort of secondary AI layer that scores every surviving signal against today's specific market conditions, because the same signal, it won't perform the same as it did in the past unless the market is sort of doing the same thing at that time. So we're passing all of this through what I call the market Rubik's Cube, which is really rotating and aligning gigabytes of data in combinations the human brain just can't conceive. And before you ever put a single dollar in, you already know about this signal. You know its historical success rate. You know the average gain, the average hold time. And that's what helps to remove the guesswork entirely and get you out of thinking through your gut, your emotions, but actually trading signals that do have repeatable frameworks.
Yeah, it is so easy to get stuck in the emotions of the market right now. So having reliable data to look at and just look at the numbers and rely on that makes a lot of sense. But I want you to show off the system a little bit and look at the stocks today, right now, in the middle of this chaotic market, this huge historic rally. Which three stocks are standing out according to the system? Let's look at the first one.
Okay, so the first stock we're going to talk about is United Airlines, and I'm showing you my screen right now. This is right in our system. So let me just highlight a couple things for you. It's a bullish outlook. It's a very short-term signal that's bullish. We have what we call a pivot category. And what this pivot category means is that it's a mean reversion strategy. You don't have to know too much about that. You can read what we show you when you highlight it in our system. We have an entry and an exit rule. And again, they're going to be semi-complicated from an entry perspective, but our system's doing all of the work. And our exit is a predefined target of we're looking at an 8% gain on United Airlines, which is actually a really big gain for a stock like this. We have what's called the quality score. This is machine learning AI derived. It's a 98.82 out of 100. That's as high as it gets. And I can turn on an alert so that I get alerted when it's time to exit this if I go ahead and trade. In the past, we've had an accuracy rate, for under review is 10 years, accuracy rate of 92.41%. That's very, very high. Average return of 6.66%. And that happens typically in about a little over half a month, I would say. So with that type of gain, you're talking about an annualized return of well over 100%. We're looking for quick, repeatable, short-term gains. Let me show you one other part of our system that I really, really like. I can start to dive into the history. We can see the first signal occurred back in 2017, and I can see how those signals performed. They all look like they perform near each other, and they're near each other in the space of sometimes days to months when these signals fire for United Airlines, but you see these clusters that we see over time. And the last big cluster that started running was right around the tariff tantrum, and I would say the markets look pretty similar to how they look today. So that's a really, really high sort of a confidence level I would have in this type of signal. I can look over time, I can see how the signal fired. Sometimes it falls before it rises. And I can see what's happened over time, how long we've held it. You're looking here at a return of 7.87% in just 2 days. So these signals sometimes come fast, and we give you an exit alert when it's time to exit this signal.
This is such a different way to look at stocks for some people. I think people who are traders have absolutely looked at systems like this. But if you're a retail investor who's maybe just getting started or is just picking and choosing your own stocks in the market right now, disregarding what's happening in the economy, you're not looking at the fundamentals or a recent earnings report that United Airlines had. You're not looking at the price of oil and how that might be impacting what consumers are doing for airline tickets. This is simply looking at historical statistics. Is that right?
Absolutely. We are just looking for a specific signal that when it fires, it's had fantastic gains in the past. And we look to see if that's repeatable right now, which it is.
All right, well, there's the first one. Let's move on to the second stock that your system is flagging right now for some potential moves coming yet this week.
Absolutely. So the second one is DT Midstream. This is a company most people haven't heard of. It's tiny. It's a little under a $14 billion market cap, and it's only been public since July of 2021. They operate natural gas pipelines, storage, and so forth across US and Canada. But what's interesting about this is we have a similar sort of opportunity that we had for United Airlines where it's bullish. It's in this pivot category, a mean reversion strategy. The entry and exit rules are a little bit different. So this was actually a stock that closed down 13 of the last 21 trading days. That is actually one of the best signals you can get. It is going to be much more oversold than other signals. And we're looking for this sort of reversal. And when that reversal happens, if you have an alert set up, you will get an alert to exit the stock based on that. And we always have a time-based exit as well if we never hit the signal. We can make money, but we've gone a full month and it's time to exit the signal because we're really moving on from those signals in no longer than a month. 95.63 quality score, it's really high. Just over 9 out of 10 trades have worked out. Average return of 8.85%. And what I like is the max loss when this signal has fired is less than 4%. So we have a very high probability situation here. Now, when I scroll down and start to look at how this signal is fired over the last 4 years, again, you see these clusters. And because we're looking over about 4-year horizon, those clusters look very close to each other, but they can be, fairly far apart. And then I can see the last 5 times this has fired, nearly every time the stock has just gone right up. And even when it didn't go right up, outside of these couple of times where it went down, it's performed really, really well over time. The median win is 10.5%. So I really like this signal right now. I love that it is this pattern where the stock has been down 13 of the last 21 trading days. That is a very, very good signal that we see in our system across many different stocks. So I love that it fired for DTM. And I think this is a great opportunity if you're interested in a short-term play on DTM. Now, because you haven't heard of this, because it's a smaller stock, we don't want to pull a whole lot of money in here, right? We still want to have risk management on our side with a stock like this. And we want to make sure that we're being careful when we trade this stock.
Yeah, so many follow-up questions here. Again, for those of you who are traders and have done this before, I'm sure this conversation is making a lot of sense to you. If you've never really thought about investing from a trader's perspective, a couple follow-up questions on the system, and we're looking at stocks like this simply because the data shows that this is a time to look at it. There's a good signal, like you're talking about. Is this anything that maybe regular retail investors can look at? If you're just wanting to buy and hold a stock for a while, is there any value to looking at some of the signals that your system flags as well for those who aren't looking at those entry and exit points to be so close together?
A lot of times what our members that have had beta access to this for a couple of months now, what they will do is they will look at a stock that they want to buy and hold. Let's say you want to buy and hold Apple. You can come right into the system and you can actually try this out for free if you scan the QR code and get into our system. You can type in any stock, and if we have a signal for it, we'll tell you about it. So let's say it's Apple. I could just type in Apple and see, is there a bullish signal right now? So that way it gives me a little bit of an edge if I'm going to buy and hold it for the long term. I want to see, should I get in today? Should I wait a couple days? Should I wait a month? And so that's a great way you can use this product as well, is looking at your buy and hold opportunities and seeing, is today the day I want to jump in?
Keith, you are such a great teacher at showing a new system and a new way to look at investing and finding good entry points for a stock, whether you are a long-term investor or looking to make these short-term gains as well. Now, before we get to the third stock you have on the list, and this one was a really strong signal, I'm excited to get to the last name. I know you have a webinar coming up just next week where you are going to do even more in-depth teaching. Talk a little bit about what you're going to cover in that webinar if people want to learn a little bit more and get some more of your teaching skills with this kind of investing.
Absolutely. So we're going to go a lot more in depth. We're going to do a lot more demos inside of that webinar, and we're going to talk about the origin of signals, the history of it, why it fits the market today and the market of the future, and how you can be really successful with using these types of signals. I've only covered stock trading today, and we'll cover a lot of stock trading in that webinar because I believe you can trade stock after stock after stock to incredible gains using a system like this, but we'll also cover options trading. You've seen a little bit on these screens where I show you this view options. There's also options plays for options traders that you can make on these signals as well. So the webinar is going to cover everything. And just for signing up for the webinar, because I want you to try out this system, I want to see how it fits for you. We give you free access to the system from now until our webinar on April 22nd.
All right, very good. And again, if you're interested in signing up for that webinar, you can sign up today and get access to that tool right away. Scan the QR code. We've got that link in the description for you if you want to try out this program too. But Keith, let's get to this last name. I know you have another bonus discussion for us too after this stock. So we've got two more things to talk about before we wrap up. What's the third stock that you're looking at in the system today?
So this is a stock you've heard of before, probably on this channel. I'll bet you I've even covered it on one of our interviews. It's Astera Labs. The ticker symbol is ALAB. This is what I would consider a very speculative stock. It's grown a lot since it went public in March of 2024, and it's a stock that I just really love following. Now, the reason I picked this was because today, as we're filming, this stock is down about almost 5.5%. And it has what we call a sprint category, where we're looking at a lot of momentum coming in to this stock, and we believe it can keep processing that type of momentum further. But what's really neat about this is because of this pullback, it gives us sort of a double opportunity in this stock. Again, I can turn on the alert to know exactly when to exit it. It has an almost 100 quality score, which our AI evaluated this situation for this stock and said, this is super high quality. Has it always won in the past? Absolutely not. Like most signals, you have signals that just fail. Typically in the past, the max loss was almost 6%, but we had a win at some point that was 50%, and our average return has been 27.22%. So it's been accurate more than 8 out of 10 times, almost 9 out of 10 times in the past when it has fired. And let me get down to the meat of this section. So what I can see here is that the last few times it's fired, it's actually exited with a loss. But I feel really good about this one, especially because the market has sort of given us this gift where A-Lab has sort of sold off a little bit today because people are just trying to take some profits. And I feel like that's going to give us a double signal here and get us back to some of these bigger wins that we've seen in the past. So I wanted to give you this sort of what I would call a very speculative opportunity where you won't want to put too much into it, but you definitely want to see if this stock can rise in a very short term and hit one of these nice patterns we saw all the way back in 2024, now that we're in 2026.
The other thing I think that's so interesting about this tool for any retail investor is it helps you kind of get diverse across all kinds of sectors. We talked about 3 completely different stocks today, and you can find opportunities in names maybe you wouldn't normally look at. So that's also, I think, an interesting way to look at this tool for retail investors just looking for some stock ideas. Let's get into, you have a little bonus for us today, Keith, and I think that this is so great to look at in this market, and that's looking at historically what's happened in a market like this. This rally has been historic. Really wild to see how quickly the stock market came back after weeks of decline. What has happened in the past? Let's look at the model and show what history has shown to happen.
Absolutely. So I'm bringing up what we call a signal study page, and we're building out all sorts of prompts for this. But I had noticed that the Qs, so really what tracks the NASDAQ, the QQQ ETF, has closed up 11 consecutive days in a row. And this is unheard of. In fact, it's only happened 9 times in history that the NASDAQ has been trading, and it's been trading for decades. So I wanted to look out and see what's sort of happened over time. What I would say is over the next, say, probably 3 to 6 months, we see a lot of volatility when I was looking back historically. But when you start to get to the 6-month mark and a 9-month mark, we have the Qs up on average at 9 months, 28%. And that has happened 100% of the time. So I can even bring up those results. I can see that there's a max drawdown during that period of time, but ultimately we had a gain. So even back in 2019 when this happened, the market at some point fell from peak to trough 28%, but it actually had a gain of 47% overall. So looking at this sort of thing and looking back at all of this price action during these periods of time, there is a lot of volatility expected to come, but this is a very, very bullish uptrend for the NASDAQ that happened over the last 11 consecutive days that points to a much higher market 12 months from now. So that gets me excited as a trader. I know there's going to be volatility, there's going to be a ton of signals, and there's going to be a lot to trade over the next year.
Yeah, expect volatility is absolutely what to gain from that chart. Keith, thank you so much for all of the insights today. A lot of great information for our viewers. If you want to hear more of a discussion on what to do during this historic rally, how to be cautious and which areas to look, check out this interview with Mark Chaikin from yesterday with Chaikin Analytics. He has a lot of insights with his knowledge in the market of where things could be headed next to. You can watch that video here.